Breaking: Lithuania closes main crossing, Moscow's land bridge severed. The moment the news broke, it sent a shockwave across Europe. A single announcement from Lithuania has triggered one of the most dramatic geopolitical escalations in recent years. This is not just a border closure. This is a direct hit on Moscow's most important land connection to Kaliningrad, an isolated Russian exclave wedged between Lithuania and Poland. And tonight, the entire region is on edge. First story hook: a decision that took only minutes to announce might reshape the future of Eastern Europe for years to come. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Conflict Front Stories channel. Please subscribe and like my videos because today's situation is unfolding at a pace no one expected. What Lithuania has just done changes the balance of power, disrupts Russia's supply lines, and forces the Kremlin into a corner it never wanted to be in. The closure of the main border crossing came without warning. Lithuanian officials described it as a security necessity, but the reality goes far deeper. For years, Russia relied on this vital corridor to move goods, equipment, and people to Kaliningrad. When Lithuania shuts this crossing, Moscow effectively loses its land bridge, cutting off its own territory from the rest of the country. And for the Kremlin, that is not just a logistical problem. It is a strategic nightmare. Kaliningrad is one of Russia's most militarized zones, home to missile bases, early warning systems, and naval facilities. If its supply routes weaken, Moscow's confidence weakens with it. As soon as the news spread, Russian commentators exploded with anger. State media demanded retaliation. Politicians called it a provocation. Some even described it as an act of hybrid warfare. Yet the truth is, Lithuania made this decision well within its national sovereignty and European Union rules. But for Moscow, optics are everything. A closed crossing means Russia appears isolated, it appears vulnerable, and it appears unable to protect territory it claims is vital to its national identity. The people living in Kaliningrad felt the consequences immediately. Long-standing concerns about shortages resurfaced overnight. Local officials rushed to reassure residents that shops were stocked, transportation was stable, and imports would continue by sea. But the reality is not so simple. Shipping routes are slower, they cost more, and they can be disrupted. For the first time in decades, many residents are openly worried about what a prolonged closure might bring. Fear spreads quicker than any official statement can contain. Russia's leadership now faces a difficult and possibly dangerous decision. If Moscow accepts the closure quietly, it risks looking weak. If it retaliates aggressively, it risks dragging NATO into a crisis. Lithuania is a NATO state, and any confrontation, whether diplomatic or military, comes with enormous consequences. The Kremlin has repeatedly said it would defend Kaliningrad by any means necessary, but taking action against a NATO member would be one of the biggest gambles in modern history. Meanwhile, Lithuania insists that the closure is a lawful response to escalating Russian threats, cyberattacks, and destabilization campaigns. Officials argue that Europe cannot remain passive while Russia continues aggressive behavior across the region. By tightening control over transport routes, Lithuania claims it is protecting its national security and standing with Ukraine and the European Union. But whether deliberate or not, this move puts Russia into direct strategic pressure. For years, analysts warned that Kaliningrad could become one of the flashpoints of a future conflict. The region has always existed like a small island of Russia inside NATO's territory, heavily armed and politically sensitive. Now, with the land bridge effectively severed, tensions reach a level unseen since the Cold War. In Moscow, generals are meeting, advisors are briefing, and decision makers are scrambling to determine how to respond without triggering a disaster they cannot control. Ukraine's supporters see Lithuania's decision as a significant turning point. By cutting off one of Russia's external arteries, Europe is sending a message: the Kremlin's aggression will not be rewarded. But others warn that such actions could push Moscow toward risky measures. A cornered Russia might make unpredictable decisions, and unpredictability in a military superpower is one of the greatest dangers of all. Russian media has already started crafting its narrative. According to them, the closure is an attack on Russian sovereignty, an attempt to strangle Kaliningrad, and a deliberate strategy to provoke conflict. Their messaging targets public emotions, telling citizens that the West is once again trying to contain Russia. This rhetoric inflames tensions and rallies national sentiment, even when the situation is far more complex than propaganda suggests. In Brussels, EU leaders are watching the situation closely. Lithuania is not acting alone. It moves with the backing of a broader European policy, but every European capital understands that this step could have ripple effects across the continent. They know Russia could respond with economic pressure, gas cuts, cyber attacks, or military drills. Every option carries risk. Every move could escalate the situation further. As this crisis intensifies, Kaliningrad becomes more than an isolated region. It becomes a symbol of the ongoing struggle between Russia and the West. The closure of a single crossing suddenly represents deeper issues: security, sovereignty, energy, borders, and the future of Europe's stability. What happens next could determine how nations prepare for years to come. Inside Russia, frustration is rising. Some officials call for negotiations. Others demand a strong response. The Kremlin is famously divided during moments of crisis, and this is no exception. Hardliners want immediate action, military convoys, threats, or retaliatory closures of their own. Moderates warn that confronting NATO is too dangerous, and ordinary citizens, many already struggling under economic pressure, wonder why their leaders push them into more conflict. Once again, Kaliningrad finds itself at the center of international attention. For decades, it has been both an asset and a liability for the Kremlin. Its strategic location gives Russia access to the Baltic Sea and proximity to Europe's heart. But its isolation makes it difficult to protect, supply, and control. Lithuania's closure exposes this vulnerability in a way Moscow never wanted the world to see. What does this mean for Europe, for Russia? For the world, analysts believe the consequences could unfold in several stages. First, Russia may try diplomatic pressure, summoning ambassadors, issuing warnings, demanding explanations. If that fails, the Kremlin could escalate its response using economic tools, cyber attacks, or disinformation campaigns. But the most dangerous scenario is a military one. A miscalculated move along the Lithuanian border could trigger NATO's collective defense clause, and that is a path no one wants to walk. Ukraine, meanwhile, is quietly observing. Any distraction or complication for Russia benefits Kyiv, giving Ukrainian forces more breathing room in their own battles. Lithuania's firm stance inspires other states that feel threatened by Moscow. But it also increases the burden on Europe to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. As night falls across the region, Russian military activity in Kaliningrad reportedly increases. Additional patrols, movements near airfields, ships adjusting their positions. None of this guarantees escalation, but it sends signals. Russia wants the world to know it is watching, ready, and unwilling to accept humiliation without a response. Lithuania, for its part, states that it will not be intimidated. Tensions rise with every statement, every troop movement, every headline. The people of Lithuania feel a mix of fear and resolve. They know what it means to live next to a powerful and unpredictable neighbor. History has taught them that security cannot be taken for granted. Closing the crossing is not simply about strategy. It is about ensuring their country's survival in a dangerous world. Yet many understand that the decision may expose them to retaliation. Families discuss evacuation plans, schools review emergency procedures. The tension is felt everywhere. Across Europe, governments prepare for uncertainty. border guards increase readiness, cybersecurity teams monitor networks, military forces reposition equipment, allied states coordinate closely, communicating in real time. The Baltic Sea, already crowded with naval activity, becomes even more active. Warships move, aircraft patrol. Drones watch from above. Every nation waits to see whether this crisis will stay political or take a more dangerous turn. In Moscow, the mood grows darker. This is not the first time Russia has faced a challenge to its regional authority, but it is one of the most sensitive. Kaliningrad represents pride, history, and military strength. Allowing it to become isolated indirectly signals weakness, a message the Kremlin has always tried to avoid, but reacting too strongly risks consequences far beyond what Russia can handle. This delicate balance is why the world is watching so closely. One decision in Vilnius could trigger another in Moscow. One statement from Russia could provoke a response from NATO. One misstep could ignite a crisis none of the parties truly want. And that is why tonight's development is so important. It is not just a border closure, it is a test of diplomacy, of restraint, and of leadership. As the hours pass, analysts search for clues about what comes next. Will Russia demand immediate reopening? Will Europe push back? Will diplomats find a compromise? Or will the situation escalate into something far more serious? For now, there are more questions than answers. But what is clear is that Lithuania's decision is a turning point. Many experts believe the Kremlin underestimated how far Europe is willing to go. They argue that Russia expected hesitation, division, or fear. Instead, Lithuania acted decisively, and that decisiveness, backed by NATO and the EU, sends a message Russia cannot ignore. The world now waits to see how Moscow will interpret this message and how it will respond. Kaliningrad's residents brace for uncertainty. Some fear shortages. Others trust that the government will adapt. But beneath the surface, anxiety grows. The region has always lived in the shadow of geopolitical tension. Now that shadow grows darker and longer. Meanwhile, Lithuania reinforces its position. Officials emphasize that this closure protects the nation and aligns with international law. They call for calm, dialogue, and respect for European sovereignty. But they also warn that they will not allow threats or intimidation to dictate their policies. Russia's next move will shape the future of this developing crisis. If Moscow pushes too hard, it risks confrontation with NATO. If it does nothing, it risks domestic backlash and strategic vulnerability. This is the trap Lithuania's decision has created, a trap Russia did not expect but must now navigate carefully. As the world holds its breath, one truth becomes clear: this story is far from over. Lithuania's closure of the main crossing is only the beginning of a longer, more complex confrontation. The consequences could reshape regional security, influence global politics, and define the next chapter of Europe's relationship with Russia. Thank you for watching this detailed breakdown of the rapidly evolving situation. If you found this analysis helpful, make sure to like the video, subscribe to Conflict Front Stories, and stay tuned for the latest updates on global events. This is a developing story, and we will continue to follow it closely as new information emerges.